A massive group of House Republicans announced the DOJ and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission could crack down on the WNBA after Caitlin Clark was viciously and violently fouled on the court and is being targeted because she is white.
That's not a sports blog. That's not a hot take artist. That's the United States Congress putting the WNBA commissioner on a federal deadline. And the clock just started ticking.
That was a pretty bad event. But
officially, the president is now paying attention to you. I mean, yikes. Here we go, folks.
July 24th. That's the date Kathy Engelbert has to answer 3 very direct questions from the Republican Study Committee, the largest caucus on Capitol Hill. And if those answers don't satisfy them, she's getting dragged into a hearing room with cameras rolling and every major outlet watching. This isn't a PR problem anymore. This is a legal exposure problem. The letter doesn't dance around it. They're citing the Department of Justice, the Department of Labor, and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Those aren't agencies you want investigating your workplace. Those are the agencies that can find violations of federal civil rights laws. And once that door opens, you don't control what they find.
The Alyssa Thomas situation, they've made comments in the past. I was like, the government is about to get involved. They are about to get involved, and they are officially involved. Kathy Engelbert is officially being asked.
So how did we get here? Because 3 months ago, this wasn't even on anyone's radar. The WNBA was riding the Caitlin Clark wave. Record ratings, sold-out arenas, the kind of mainstream attention the league has been chasing for 2 decades. And then the violence started.
By July 24th, this is their way of politely saying, we want these answers. If you will not give it to us, we will drag you up here and demand them on the spot with everybody watching. That's what will happen. Number 1, what is your review mechanism for physical hostility and violence on the court? ? How will you hold players accountable for overly aggressive actions on the court, including towards Caitlin Clark?
Question 1. What is your review mechanism for physical hostility and violence on the court? That's Congress asking the commissioner to explain, on the record, how the league decides what crosses the line. Because right now, to anyone watching, it looks like there is no line. Chennedy Carter hip-checks Caitlin Clark away from the ball in a dead ball situation. Flagrant one. The league calls it a common foul. Upgrades it after the fact when the video goes viral. Dejanai Carrington pokes Clark in the eye going for a rebound. No call on the floor. The league reviews it, says it was incidental. Angel Reese gets called for a flagrant after swiping at Clark's head on a layup attempt. Reese says after the game she was just going for the ball. Then comes the Alyssa Thomas incident. June 10th, Sun versus Fever. Thomas drives, Clark contests, they get tangled up. Thomas throws a forearm directly into Clark's throat. Then, as they're on the ground, drives her knee into Clark's midsection. The replay is clear, the announcers go silent, the league reviews it and hands down a 1-game suspension. 1 game. For what looked to most people watching like an intentional act of violence on national television.
It's a 1-game suspension. I said, oh shit, the government's about to get involved in this. Because that's a bullshit suspension. It does nothing. It flexes no muscle as a league at all. It showed no inclination to protect the players on the court at all. And the moment they handed down that 1-game suspension, I said, the government's about to get involved in this.
And that's the moment this stopped being a sports story and became something bigger. Because the suspension told everyone exactly what the league thought the behavior was worth. It told the players how much restraint was actually required. And it told the public that the WNBA either didn't see what everyone else saw or didn't care. Within 48 hours, members of Congress started making statements, not tweets, statements, formal on-the-record comments about workplace safety and equal protection under the law. That's not normal. Congress doesn't typically weigh in on sports league discipline unless there's a belief that the league has lost control of the situation or is failing to protect someone being targeted.
Oh boy. The government has noticed that. Yikes. Further fueling concerns about the culture surrounding these incidents.
Then it got worse. A screenshot starts circulating. A fan account posts something about harming Caitlin Clark, and Tiffany Hayes, a player in the league, likes the post. She, unlike it later, says it was an accident, but the damage is done. Because now you've got a sitting member of the league appearing to endorse violence against another player on social media. The letter from Congress specifically mentions that. Recently, a player even appeared to endorse violence against Clark in a social media post, further fueling concerns about the culture surrounding these incidents. They didn't name Hayes, but they didn't have to. Everyone knows what post they're talking about.
In addition, concerning reports suggest that many of these attacks against Caitlin Clark may be racially motivated. As commissioner, you have an obligation to ensure every player competes in a safe and professional environment, both on and off the court, free from violence, discrimination, or retaliation.
Question 2. How will you hold players accountable for overly aggressive actions on the court, including towards Caitlin Clark? That's not a general question. That's Congress telling the commissioner they've watched the tape, they've seen the pattern, and they want to know what the enforcement mechanism actually is. Because from the outside, it looks arbitrary. Here's what we know. Caitlin Clark has been fouled harder, more often, and with less protection from officials than any other player in recent WNBA memory. The stats back it up. She leads the league in fouls drawn. She's been hit in the head, the throat, the torso. She's been body checked away from the play. And the vast majority of those incidents were either not called, downgraded, or resulted in minimal punishment. At the same time, the discourse around her has been unlike anything the league has seen. Players have openly questioned whether she deserves the attention. Analysts have suggested she needs to be humbled. Entire segments on sports talk shows have debated whether the physicality she's experiencing is just veterans welcoming a rookie or something more targeted.
Far beyond routine physical play, yet the WNBA and its officiating have too often failed to address these unacceptable incidents and hold players accountable. Recently, a player even appeared to endorse violence against Clark in a social media post. Oh!
And then Trump weighs in. The sitting president of the United States, asked about the WNBA during an interview, says Caitlin Clark was treated rather rough and calls the situation a pretty bad event. Whether you like Trump or not, that's the Oval Office putting the league on notice. That's the kind of comment that gets remembered when appropriations bills come up, when the NBA negotiates the next CBA, when anyone in Washington is deciding how much political capital to spend defending a league. Because here's what most people don't realize. The WNBA is subsidized. It loses money every year. The NBA covers the shortfall as part of their broader investment in growing the game. But that arrangement depends on goodwill, on the belief that the WNBA is a net positive for the sport and for the business. If the league becomes a political liability, if it's the subject of federal investigations and presidential criticism, that math changes fast.
The Republican Study Committee, the largest caucus on Capitol Hill, and we are committed to strengthening families and protecting opportunities for women in sports. As the commissioner of the WNBA, you should do the same. Uh-oh. Kathy Engelbert.
Question 3. What steps are you taking to protect WNBA players from online harassment and off-court threats? This one's interesting because it flips the script. It's not just about what's happening to Caitlin Clark. It's about what's happening to everyone in the league as a result of the controversy. Because the reality is, once this story went national, everyone involved started getting harassed. Players who fouled Clark got death threats. Players who defended the physicality got doxxed. Caitlin Clark herself has had to deal with an avalanche of both support and criticism that no 22-year-old should have to navigate. The league's social media accounts are a war zone. Every post turns into a referendum on race, gender, jealousy, and fairness. And Congress is asking, what is the league doing about that? Not what are they saying, what are they doing? Because if the answer is not much, then you've got a hostile work environment claim waiting to happen. You've got players who can argue they're being subjected to harassment and retaliation, and the league is failing to take reasonable steps to protect them.
Act like, oh, those are basketball plays. Marina Mayberry slamming into the side of Caitlin Clark? No, the hell it's not. That's not a basketball play. All right, Alyssa Thomas putting...
Here's the part that should actually scare the WNBA. This isn't just political theater. The agencies Congress mentioned, the DOJ, the DOL, the EEOC, those are enforcement bodies. They have subpoena power. They can demand internal communications, review disciplinary records, interview players and staff under oath. And if they find that the league knew about a pattern of racially motivated targeting and failed to act, the penalties aren't just fines. They're consent decrees, federal monitors, court-ordered reforms. That's what happened to police departments. That's what happened to corporations with discrimination scandals. The federal government steps in, takes over the compliance function, and doesn't leave until they're satisfied the problem is fixed. For a league that's already struggling financially, that's an existential threat.
On Trump's radar. Woo! That's not the radar you want to be on. You want him to make more comments?
And it's not just Republicans. Riley Gaines, the former swimmer who's been outspoken on women's sports issues, posted the letter and it went viral in her circles. That's a whole different constituency now paying attention. Parents, youth sports advocates, people who see this as part of a larger conversation about fairness and safety in women's athletics. The WNBA wanted mainstream attention. They got it, but not the kind they wanted. They wanted coverage of the games, the skill, the competition. Instead, they're the lead story because of violence, allegations of racial targeting, and a federal investigation.
You have officially been put on notice by members of our government. I saw this coming a mile away because I was like, I'm going to tell you when I saw it coming. When they handed Alyssa Thomas.
So what happens next? The league has until July 24th to respond. That's not a lot of time to craft answers that will satisfy Congress, protect the league legally, and not inflame the situation further, because anything Engelbert says in that response can and will be used in future litigation. If she admits there's a problem, she's admitting liability. If she denies there's a problem, she's contradicting what millions of people saw with their own eyes. The smart play would have been to get ahead of this months ago. Suspend Alyssa Thomas for 5 games instead of 1. Make an example. Show that the league takes player safety seriously and won't tolerate targeting, regardless of who the player is or why it's happening. But they didn't. They went with the minimum, hoped it would blow over, and now they're answering to Congress.
And this this is what the WNBA doesn't want to happen. That's why they want to censor a lot of us, because they don't want this to be on anybody's radar. And unfortunately for them, this last incident went mega nuclear.
There's another angle here that's not getting enough attention: the NBA. Adam Silver is the commissioner of the NBA, which owns and operates the WNBA. If this goes to hearings, he's sitting next to Kathy Engelbert answering questions. His reputation is on the line. The NBA's reputation is on the line. And Silver has spent years building goodwill with players, with media, with politicians on both sides. He does not want to be the commissioner who presided over a federal civil rights investigation into workplace safety. Which means the pressure on Engelbert isn't just coming from Congress, it's coming from inside the NBA offices. Silver is absolutely making calls right now, asking what the plan is, how they're going to fix this, and whether she's the right person to lead the league through what's coming next.
Right? It went viral everywhere. And they could no longer keep it in their little bubbles. And ESPN couldn't protect the league. And all these entities couldn't protect the league.
Let's talk about what the league could have done differently, because this was preventable. When Caitlin Clark got drafted, everyone knew she was going to be the biggest star the WNBA had seen in years. Everyone knew the attention was going to be massive. Everyone knew there would be tension with veteran players who'd been grinding in obscurity while Clark got magazine covers before she played a single professional game. The league should have seen that coming and put infrastructure in place. Mandatory media training for all players on how to handle the spotlight. Clear, public standards for what constitutes unacceptable physical play, with escalating penalties. A social media policy that makes it clear you cannot endorse or encourage violence against another player, period. And a PR strategy that didn't rely on hoping ESPN would run interference every time something went wrong. They did none of that. They let it play out organically, assumed the players would figure it out, and now they're dealing with a federal investigation.
Her throat, her fist in Caitlin Clark's throat, her knee into Caitlin Clark's private area. That's not a basketball play. All right? There's no excuse for it. And yet,
here's the thing about the racial angle, because it's in the letter, and it's unavoidable. Congress is saying, on the record, that concerning reports suggest that many of these attacks against Caitlin Clark may be racially motivated. That's not a sports talk radio host stirring the pot. That's elected officials putting it in writing. And the reason they can say that is because other people said it first. Analysts, former players, fans. The discourse around Caitlin Clark from day one has included explicit references to her race, her popularity, and whether she's getting opportunities that black players with similar or better stats don't get. Some of that criticism is fair, some of it isn't. But when it crosses over into she deserves to get hit, that's when it becomes a legal problem. The WNBA is majority black. Caitlin Clark is white. If the league is seen as failing to protect a white player from targeted violence by black players, and there's any evidence that race was a factor in the targeting, that's a textbook civil rights case. It doesn't matter if that's an accurate characterization of what happened. It matters if a reasonable investigation could conclude that's what happened. And right now, based on the public record, it could.
Here we are. Tell me what you think. Hit subscribe. The shit has hit the fan. Peace. I'm out. Till next time.
Thanks for watching.
So where does this leave us? The WNBA has 2 weeks to respond to Congress. If the response is weak, they're getting called to testify. If they testify, the media coverage will be brutal. If the media coverage is brutal, sponsors start getting nervous. If sponsors get nervous, the financial model collapses even faster than it already is. And through all of this, Caitlin Clark is still playing, still getting fouled, still dealing with the aftermath of being the most famous player in a league that doesn't quite know what to do with her. The Fever are in playoff position. She's putting up Rookie of the Year numbers, and every game, every hard foul, every social media post is now being watched by people who are deciding whether the WNBA is a league worth saving. The league wanted Caitlin Clark to save them. Turns out she might be the reason they finally have to answer for how they've been running things all along. Do you think Congress is overstepping, or is this exactly the kind of oversight the WNBA needs right now? Drop a comment. And if you want to see how this plays out, hit subscribe, because July 24th is going to be very interesting.